DFS community, happy Saturday. Welcome into the Week 6 edition of the most accurate DFS show in the industry. This is the Adjusted Line Play Report, where we take a deep dive into the play in the trenches to determine game script and player outcomes. This show is presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman. You can find myself over on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at Todzilla1337. And you can find Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. All right, folks, we're going to get into it today. I apologize in advance. We're kind of hosting a dog here, taking care of one. So if you hear some clitter clack and stuff in the background, I apologize. But got a lot of new people here, so we're going to go over how this show usually works. So for those of you who are new, really what we're going to be doing here is pitting our offensive and defensive line play against each other. So you can look at this London game. We have Baltimore's offensive pass protection at 28, Tennessee at 29. That's a pretty even matchup. That suggests the offensive and defensive line will be pretty evenly matched, and it shouldn't really play an effect on the game. Typically, when we see that happen, we know that the studs in football are just better than their competition. And in these scenarios where it's an even up situation where they're very close, typically those studs are going to eat just because they're better than everybody else. Offensive line, defensive line, no real advantage. So the only advantage is your skill set. That's why studs eat. Getting into perhaps a little bit more of a range here, we see Baltimore's defensive run stopping at number 7, Tennessee at 18 on the offensive run blocking side. That's a lot bigger advantage for Baltimore's defense there. We would expect Tennessee to have difficulty running the ball in this, or not be as effective running the ball. And that can take any number of factors, but really looking at that run game not being super effective. You know, if their pass game is going to be good, maybe they can move the ball, but they're going to stall out. That's good for the kickers. That's not necessarily the case in this particular scenario, but that's kind of how this works. And for those of you who are new, that's how you can think of these games in this adjusted line play report. And hopefully it gives you a little bit more information to make a little bit more educated guesses in terms of who you start and sit this week and who goes into your DFS lineups to win you that money. All right, with that being said, let's get underway for this week's slate of games. We're going to start with that London game here. In this London game, as of Saturday morning, I'm recording this actually about noon Central Time, so by the time this gets out to everybody, it's going to be a happy afternoon, but these were updated in the morning. We have Baltimore and Tennessee in that London game, 42-point Vegas game total, so not great there, but Baltimore 4.5-point favorites. Baltimore 23.25 team implied total. Tennessee 18.75 team implied total. As we are looking at Baltimore offensive pass protection, pretty even with Tennessee. The run blocking, Baltimore number 12, Tennessee number 10. And then the DVOAs are roughly following the same aspect here. With that being said, it looks like Baltimore, their pass protection hasn't been great, but Tennessee's pass rush is pretty poor. They're probably going to have a little bit more time than they're used to throw the ball, which is going to be good for their pass game to be able to move the ball. On the run blocking side, it's pretty even. I would expect them to be able to, methodically move down the field in these particular scenarios. Lamar might be pushed out of the pocket, might not be if he's got more time. Again, could be looking at a better game from him via the air than necessarily the ground. And it doesn't look like the run game is going to be slowing them down any, so I think Baltimore is going to be able to sustain drives in this particular matchup. Probably fine scoring those 24 points that we're predicting here from Vegas. Nothing really to write home about. Again, just studs eat in this particular scenario. Lamar Jackson pretty good. I think he'll do well in this matchup. And then probably Mark Andrews being the next closest stud should be pretty solid. And if they have a little bit additional time to throw the ball, you could see some deep shots in this particular game. I know Lamar has just missed people on these deep shots throughout the season so far. Maybe those come into fruition this particular matchup. We've seen Zay Jones get overshot and a few of these deep shots. So Be interesting to see there if they connect on one of those. Lamar would be my biggest interest on the Baltimore side, followed by Andrews and Zay Flowers. More of dart throws for OBJ and Bateman if they're playing. Getting into that Tennessee side, offensive pass protection 14, Baltimore number 10, and the pass rush a little bit more significant there with the DVOAs. Tennessee's pass DVOA on offense 20, Baltimore number 4 in the defensive pass DVOA. Means they're getting home to the quarterback on those particular scenarios. A little bit a higher rank there in terms of not allowing the run stopping, as we alluded to earlier. Baltimore number 7, Tennessee 18. Very similar there in the DVOAs 6 and 18. To me, this is telling me that Tennessee is going to struggle moving the ball. The run game looks the worst out of the two, but to me, I think it just means Tennessee is going to struggle. For me, I'm avoiding that pass game. Like I said, they're going to struggle. I don't see them getting a ton of first downs. The only person I see being of any value in this particular matchup this week is going to be Tyjae Spears. I think with them struggling to move the ball, probably behind the chains for a lot of this game, it's going to lead to a lot of dump-offs to Tyjae Spears in the backfield and kind of running that route. I wouldn't be surprised to see Henry with a few extra targets compared to usual. And then, Okonkwo, perhaps. We've seen him be pretty explosive from here, from this position as tight end. But really, Tennessee, it's going to be an island game. Tyjae Spears is probably the one person I want from Tennessee in this particular matchup, and maybe a cheaper pass-catching option from Tennessee to, take care of some of these quicker throws. But really, Tyjae Spears probably grabbing quite a few people from Baltimore defense perhaps, Baltimore kicker, especially if Tennessee is going to be turning the ball over quite a bit in Baltimore. Those slow methodical drives, if they stall out, we could see the kicker getting a few more. So getting Baltimore kicker, Baltimore defense, and then probably Lamar, Tyjae Spears, and then sprinkle in who you want from there. I think that's going to be your winning lineup for this particular island game. All right. Now, with London game out of the way, we're going to get into the main slate of games. How this works, folks, for those of you who are new, we're going to go from the number 1 Vegas game total on the slate and work our way down to the worst one on the slate. So, number 1 on the slate is Arizona and Los Angeles. It's a 48.5 Vegas game total. So, good, not great in terms of a Vegas game total, but as number 1, just realize that a lot of these games are going to be a little bit more low scoring this week compared to the last couple of weeks, according to Vegas. We do have Arizona going into Los Angeles. The Rams are 7-point home favorites. Again, Vegas game total 48.5. That is the best on the main slate. Los Angeles 27.75 team implied total, which is good for number 2 on the slate. Arizona at 20.75 team implied total. Again, they are the underdogs. Getting into the away team, Arizona pass protection number 6, LA number 16 at getting after the quarterback. DVOA pretty similar, 10 for Arizona's pass defense on offense, 22 for LA on the pass DVOA on defense. Suggestive that Arizona probably going to be fine and have plenty of time to throw the ball. Getting into the run blocking side, we do see some injuries there, so take those into account. But the run blocking, Arizona 14, LA 18. Pretty close to even there. The DVOA a lot more pronounced with Arizona at number 6 in run DVOA, Los Angeles 25th. Really is just suggesting Arizona probably going to be grinding it out, but every once in a while pop off a pretty efficient, effective play there. A lot of times this is indicative of them scoring touchdowns via the ground, but really in this it's suggestive, hey, Arizona's not going to really struggle at all running the ball. It's not a great matchup, but it should be fine. So those backups should be fine from Arizona for the running backs, and then getting into the pass game, this should be good. So suggestive number 1 overall. LA, they're predicting to score points. Arizona likely to be behind according to this Vegas line of -7. When I see that and that Arizona should have time to throw the ball, I do like the pass game in this. So getting those Arizona weapons, pass catchers there, I think all kind of viable in DFS as dart throws. Hollywood Brown, I would expect to be probably pretty popular. It sounds like the LA team in general is going to be pretty popular for DFS, but you're going to want to start some of these pieces for sure on your start-sit decision. So if you got like a Rondale Moore, he might be worthwhile, or a Michael Wilson, he might be worthwhile putting into your lineup, or somebody maybe in a worse matchup if you're kind of trying to decide between the two. Michael Wilson, Rondale Moore, certainly good dart throws in DFS. I don't mind the quarterback there for Arizona, Joshua Dobbs, as a cheap dart throw within the DraftKings slates there. So kind of interesting there. Arizona shouldn't be too bothered by LA's defense there. Should be able to move the ball. They are the away team and projected to be down in this. So I do like Arizona's ability to kind of push the pace here, especially if we look at Los Angeles and if they're going to be moving the ball. We'll get to their side. LA, number 28 in offensive pass protection, not great. Arizona, 19th. That is pretty heavily in the favor of Arizona, suggestive that they should be able to get some sort of pressure on Matthew Stafford. 19th isn't great, though, so LA may be finding themselves with a little bit more pass time than they're used to, but still not a great situation for them. LA is explosive, though, so number 12 overall in the offensive pass DVOA. Arizona seemingly giving up more explosive plays at 30th in DVOA. So keep that in mind. Could see like Puka or Cooper Kupp, or maybe even probably their most explosive player, Tutu Atwell, getting a long bomb here from Stafford in this particular matchup. More interesting, though, is LA's run game at number 11 versus Arizona's 31 in stopping the run. Huge favor of LA. Expect them to be able to run the ball very effectively. Run DVOA for Los Angeles is number 7, where Arizona's defense is 26. Again, heavily in the favor of Los Angeles. Kyren Williams, if he's not going to be very popular in this particular DFS slate, would be a great play. Seems like LA probably going to move the ball very effectively on the ground. I would expect that to run through mostly Kyren Williams, as he's getting all of those reps essentially at running back. So expect him to have a good game. If the pass game's struggling a little bit, I do like LA's chances of being methodical here, especially with that run game being effective. That's probably going to open up that pass game a little bit. Especially against this Arizona defense, which isn't super great. So I think, if you're thinking LA is going to be under pressure, Kyren Williams maybe gets a few more receptions. We see Higbee maybe with a few more targets in this game. And both Puka and Kupp certainly plenty capable of running some underneath routes. All good benefits. So if LA's fine moving the ball, if Arizona's fine moving the ball, I do like this game to potentially reach shootout status. Just realize it's probably going to be super popular in DFS this week. But that's going to do it for the number 1 game on the slate this week. Kind of an interesting one there. I think a lot of these players are in play for your start-sit decisions and DFS. Getting into the number 2 game on the slate, we have Carolina heading into Miami. Carolina is 14-point road underdogs, so Miami at home, 14-point favorites. Number 2 game total on the slate at 47.5. We have Miami at 30.75 team implied total, number 1 on the slate by a pretty significant margin. Carolina 16.75, which is one of the worst. We have 11 matchups, so second worst matchup. Second worst team implied total. Miami best team implied total in this particular matchup. So getting into the Carolina side, number 20 on offensive pass protection, Miami number 2 in the defensive pass rush. Suggestive Miami should be able to get home, get some sacks on Bryce Young. I would expect that in this particular case, especially if Miami's up big. So defense, certainly start them if you have them in your season-long leagues. DVOA pretty even there at 23 for Miami on defense, 30th for Carolina's offense. Run blocking, unfortunately, for Carolina, not much better. They're number 25 in run blocking, which is even worse than their pass protection. And unfortunately, Miami's number 1 in defensive run stopping, which is even better than their pass rush. So Carolina probably going to struggle to move the ball. be aware I did say this last week. It was a very similar situation for Carolina. We did see them come through with some pretty solid performances, especially from Adam Thielen. So keep that in mind. But it's looking more like, hey, they're going to really struggle to move the ball. Bryce Young, certainly, if you're placing prop bets and it's a half an interception, put the over on that. He should be throwing a pick. Wouldn't be surprised to see him throw 2 in this particular matchup. Just with the way things are looking here. Carolina going to struggle. I don't even want dart throws from their team, but Adam Thielen probably your best bet in terms of volume and in this matchup. Otherwise, pretty much a full fade on that Carolina team. Miami's defense obviously in play. Getting into the Miami offensive side, number 6 on offensive pass protection. Carolina number 4 in the defensive pass rush. That's pretty even. Your studs are going to eat. In a particular matchup like this, I do like Tyreek Hill. It seems like he really benefits from these closer matchups like this on the pass rush side. So expect him to have a pretty solid week. It's typically not been great for Waddle in these particular matchups this year. I'm not sure why that is, but Hill seems to be the biggest beneficiary. And then we've also seen the running backs get quite a few targets in these scenarios. And it seems like Mostert's going to have no Devon Achane there to steal some of that work. Sounds like Jeff Wilson is doubtful, so Salvan Ahmed could be getting some of those receptions there for Miami if that's the case. The run blocking side, Miami 16, Carolina stone worst at number 32. Same story for the offensive run DVOA in Carolina 32. Miami's run DVOA number 1. Absolute most large difference you can have, number 1 versus number 32 there. Expect Miami to be very explosive on the ground. As I was saying, Mostert should be getting most of the run at the beginning. Jeff Wilson is questionable, or actually doubtful, I believe, to play in this particular week. I think Salvan Ahmed, especially in DFS, is a tremendous dart throw. Just be careful if he's going to be real popular. Maybe, fade him, but I think, if he's coming in less than 15% rostered in your DFS lineups, I would certainly put him in a decent chunk of mine for this week because I think he's going to get an extended run. I think Miami's going to be up big, and especially if, it's third quarter, maybe it's 30-3 or something like that. Salvan Ahmed and the third string or previous fourth string running back probably going to be carrying most of the load there to close out the game while they preserve Mostert over the next 4 weeks while Achane is kind of recovering and we see Jeff Wilson trying to come back from his injury. I think Ahmed could get a lot of run here. Certainly a start-sit decision there. I think he is certainly in play to go in. There's a lot of running backs that are out. He's somebody you could probably still scoop up off the waivers and put into your lineup and especially in a full PPR league, would not be shocked to see him over 10 or 12 points in this particular matchup. So dart throw extraordinaire there. Salvan Ahmed, good in this matchup. All right, let's move on to the third game on the slate, Seattle at Cincinnati. We have Seattle going in to Cincinnati with Cincinnati as 3-point home favorites. It's all the way down now to a 45 Vegas game total. Again, that's number 3 on the slate. Cincinnati 24 team implied total, good for the third best on the slate. Seattle at number 21, which is the 12th best. Again, Cincinnati 3-point home favorites, pretty standard for the home team just to get that 3-point line. So they think these teams are pretty evenly matched, and it's just a home field advantage there. Getting into the away side, Seattle, we have them at number 12, offensive pass protection. Cincinnati number 7. Those are exactly flip-flopped when it comes to pass DVOA. Seattle number 7, Cincinnati 12 on DVOA pass defense. Pretty close to even there. I would expect more of a studs eat type of scenario. I think Seattle's got a lot of pass catching weapons, so we do see DK Metcalf, Lockett, and probably JSN all be somewhat viable in this particular matchup. They do use a lot of tight ends in Seattle's offense as well, which is kind of unfortunate, but they're coming off a bye. One thing to monitor, maybe not necessarily putting them into your DFS lineups, but always monitor those monitor those rookies when they're coming off of their bye week. Jackson Smith and Jigba is coming off the bye week. See if his role changes a little bit here as they try to maybe install him a little bit more onto their offensive side. Pretty poor, outing here for the first 4 weeks from him. Really low ADOT. Does that change after the bye week? Are they getting him more involved? Are they changing his role up, expanding his route tree, things like that? Very interesting thing to monitor for this game. Getting into the run blocking side for Seattle, it's better than their pass game. It's number 8 in run blocking, Cincinnati 15th on the defensive side, and then run DVOA, Seattle 9, Cincinnati 30th. I expect Seattle to have some explosive plays on the run game here. That certainly benefits Kenneth Walker. I do like him in this particular matchup to be able to have some of these bursty, explosive plays against the Cincinnati defense. Keep that in mind, especially if Seattle is moving the ball pretty well via the air or not struggling via the air, and we see him doing pretty good on the ground. They're probably going to have a lot of scoring opportunities, which could lead to a multi-touchdown game here for Walker in this matchup if they're getting close to the end zone. On the Cincinnati side, number 9 in offensive pass protection, Seattle 12th. Again, that's pretty close, pretty even matchup. Studs are going to eat. We saw last week this really favored Jamar Chase. And if you watch last week's episode, I did say Jamar Chase, probably going to be one of those slate breaker types where he goes over 30 DK points. He certainly surpassed that last week. This is shaping up to be a very similar matchup with Seattle in terms of the adjusted line play report. And certainly the run stopping here for Seattle, number 1 and number 2 versus Cincinnati's offensive run blocking at 25 and 20. I would expect Cincinnati to have to throw the ball in order to move the ball. And Mixon probably going to be struggling there on the ground. We haven't seen him be particularly effective. He's probably in a void unless you're getting point per carry in some of your leagues. Definitely not the case for DFS. So I think Mixon's going to be a fade for me in DFS. He's certainly cash viable with all the running back injuries. He certainly gets a lot of volume. I just don't expect him to be having a great game. I think Cincinnati's moving the ball via the air. It's going to be a Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase show again. And then really Tyler Boyd, he's getting towards the end of his career. He's okay still, but not great. We saw Irwin last week have a lot of targets in a bigger game. If those are your two main competitors for targets, that really just means Jamar Chase probably going to see another 15 to 20 targets in this, while their run game struggles. And expect him to get another probably double-digit reception game in this particular matchup and be very effective, especially if Seattle is not struggling moving the ball. Cincinnati is going to have to kind of put their foot on the gas in the pass game, which obviously is going to benefit Burrow and Jamar Chase in this matchup. All right, getting into the number 4 game on the slate, it's Indianapolis at Jacksonville. Getting into this matchup, Jacksonville 4-point home favorites, 44-point Vegas game total, which is the 4th highest on the slate. So a lot of 4s there. A 4 Vegas line, 44 Vegas game total, and a 4th highest on the main slate. Jacksonville 24 team implied total, Indianapolis 20. Jacksonville tied for the 3rd highest rank there, which don't know if that's true. Yep, 24 tied for 3rd highest on the slate for Jacksonville's team implied total. Getting into that Indianapolis side, they're pretty even up matchup here on both sides of the ball. Closer on offensive pass protection with 17 versus 18 and 15 and 13 on the DVOA side. So really close there on the pass protection side. Run blocking side, Indianapolis 19, Jacksonville 24. That's the better of the two, but still pretty close there. It's not going to be a huge favor for anyone. Studs eat type of scenario. And we've seen with Gardner Minshew in there, Pittman and the rookie there, Josh Downs, tend to benefit the most. So I would expect that to continue in this matchup, especially if Jacksonville is going to be leading in this and Indianapolis is going to have to throw the ball. I would expect those two to have a little increase in target volume this week, with the run game being not quite as great. Run game, Jonathan Taylor could be in for a larger workload this week, hopefully, compared to what we've seen last week, where Moss got quite a bit of the work there. Maybe they're just easing Jonathan Taylor back in. That I think will probably shift a little bit in this particular matchup. And I do see Jonathan Taylor probably having the better of the two, or better game of those two between Moss and Taylor in this particular matchup. Probably not people I'm going to be playing in DFS. If I'm going to be doing any of it, it's going to be Pittman or Josh Downs, probably as a one-off. If you want to stack Minshew with both of those two, I think that's okay. Probably not a super great thing, but I think I like Pittman and I like Josh Downs as those one-off, hey, just get in a filler from this particular matchup. It is top 4 on the slate, and go from there. Not necessarily a full team stack. Getting into the Jacksonville side, they're number 27 in offensive pass protection. Indianapolis number 18 at getting after the quarterback. Fairly large gap there. I would expect Indianapolis to be able to get after Jacksonville, at least generate some pressure, get close to getting some sacks there on Trevor Lawrence. Going to lead to probably a need for some more underneath routes. Who's running those from Jacksonville? Evan Ingram, probably the biggest beneficiary, maybe some dump offs to Travis Etienne. I could see that happening. Speaking of Travis Etienne, Jacksonville run blocking number 3, Indianapolis 20th in stopping the run. I think this was shaping up to be a very positive game for Travis Etienne. I think he could see a few extra targets, and I think he's going to be pretty solid in terms of just, gaining 4 to 7 yards on his rushes and just keeping those chains moving on the ground. I think Jacksonville will be finding themselves kind of grinding out those longer drives with being very effective on the ground and then struggling a little bit in the pass game. So should be an interesting one there. Travis Etienne and Ingram, I think, are my favorites there from the Jacksonville side. And then that's probably your bring back if you're running 2 people from this particular matchup in your DFS games. All right, getting on from there, number 5 game on the slate. We have Minnesota heading into the Windy City of Chicago. Minnesota actually 3-point road favorites here. This Vegas game total is 43.5, 5th best on the slate. Minnesota, a 23.25 team implied total, 6th best on the slate. Chicago, 20.25 team implied total. Getting into the Minnesota side here, number 11 in offensive pass protection, Chicago 30th in defensive pass rush, DVOA for Minnesota's offense 14, Chicago 31. Highly indicative that Minnesota should have plenty of time to throw the ball. This is good considering they don't have Justin Jefferson anymore, but I'd expect Hawkinson to be fine, Jordan Addison to be fine, KJ Osborne is certainly a dart throw potential in here, and a deep dart throw would be Powell. We saw him get some run last week, even before the Justin Jefferson injury, so keep that in mind. Offensive run blocking, surprisingly, for Minnesota, number 2. Chicago, number 6 in defensive run stopping. DVOA, pretty close as well. Minnesota 19, Chicago 20th. So pretty even there on the Minnesota run blocking side. I think they're going to be okay running the ball in this. I think the running backs are an avoid. That would be Cam Akers and Alexander Madison, kind of an avoid there. I think Minnesota is going to be able to move the ball very effectively via the air and then be fine on the run game. I expect Minnesota to score touchdowns in this and maybe not necessarily field goals. So very good in the pass game. I think Kirk Cousins in a DFS game is probably pretty viable here. You're going to get a little bit cheaper options with KJ Osborne and Addison perhaps. I'm not sure where their prices are at currently. Certainly you can go the Hawkinson route. Powell certainly has been getting some run. You could see him with some extended run in this matchup. And that's how I'd attack the Minnesota side. Getting into the Chicago side, they're 31st in offensive pass protection, and Minnesota 13th in the pass rush, so that's heavily in favor of Minnesota. They should be able to get after the quarterback here in this one, flush Fields out of the pocket. I'd expect Fields to have some more scramble rush attempts in this particular matchup. The run blocking, though, for Chicago, number 6, Minnesota, number 14 at stopping the run. DFS-wise, Deonta Foreman probably going to be very, very popular because both Roshan Johnson and Khalil Herbert have been ruled out. Deonta Foreman should get plenty of work in this particular matchup. If you think he's going to go down with an injury, I think they had Darrington Evans that they pulled off the street this week. But really, D'Onta Foreman should get plenty of work, especially if Chicago's under duress and they're dumping the ball off. D'Onta Foreman probably going to see quite a few targets in this matchup too. Wouldn't be surprised to see Cole Kmet with quite a heavy workload in this if they're getting after the quarterback. Chicago should be fine moving the ball on the ground. Struggle a little bit in the air. How well are they going to kind of keep up with Minnesota there, who's pretty neutral run blocking but really good in the pass game? That remains to be seen, but Chicago probably going to be okay moving the ball. It's going to be a lot on Fields' shoulders. It's going to be a lot on D'Onta Foreman and then maybe Cole Kmet. We've seen DJ Moore kind of smash the last few weeks. I think that kind of takes a little break this week, a little hiatus. I don't think he's going to be killing your redraft team by any means, but he's not somebody that I'm going to want to use in DFS based off of this matchup. Be more interested on the Cole Kmet and D'Onta Foreman side for those purposes. Certainly D'Onta Foreman is somebody that you're going to want in a cash game lineup. He should be really highly rostered in cash just because of the volume. And then he should be getting some targets there. So redraft and cash game, he is certainly going into your lineup. All right, moving on to the number 6 game on the slate. We actually have a 3-way tie. We're just going to start at the top, go to the bottom. So it's going to be Washington, Atlanta game, New Orleans, Houston, and Detroit, Tampa Bay. We'll start with the Washington and Atlanta game. Right here, they're all 42.5 Vegas game totals here. Again, tied for 6th best on the slate. Atlanta, 2.5-point home favorites over Washington. 22.5 team implied total for Atlanta, 9th best. Washington, 20 team implied total, 16th best. Washington offensive pass protection, 31. Atlanta, 26 at getting after the quarterback. Could see Washington here with a little bit more time than they're used to throw the ball. Atlanta's pass rush hasn't been very good. That could be very good for Washington's pass game. They certainly have a lot of weapons there. Wouldn't be shocked to see those people perform in this particular matchup. Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin. We did see Logan Thomas last week have a very, very good game. I would expect that to perhaps continue this week against this Atlanta defense when they have a little bit more time. So sneaky dart throws, I think, on that Washington side for their particular wide receivers. Getting into the run blocking side, Washington 21, Atlanta 17 at stopping the run. It's more like a studs eat scenario. I don't think Washington necessarily has studs on the running back side. If you think Washington's going to be under duress, leading to some of those quicker dump-offs, you're probably looking at a Logan Thomas week this week or some Antonio Gibson dump-offs as well. It seems like he's the main pass catcher there. But really, I think Washington's going to find themselves with a little bit more time to throw. They're going to be okay running the ball. They should be okay on offense. If they're finding themselves with a bit more time, I could see this pass game actually flourishing this week. Keep that in mind. I just don't know if it's going to happen necessarily. So that would be the route that I would attack for any sort of GPP tournaments, though. Getting into the offensive side for Atlanta, number 32 in offensive pass protection, dead last. Washington, number 5 in the pass rush. They should be able to get after Atlanta here. Desmond Ridder, not always the greatest quarterback in the world. I think Washington's defense is in play here against Atlanta if Atlanta's going to be throwing the ball. Their rush game is pretty much the exact same as Washington. So Atlanta 17 in run blocking, 21 for Washington's defense. Pretty even there. Studs eat. I expect Bijan to be perfectly fine there. And if Atlanta's under pressure, getting a few more quick passes off, that's probably going to be to Bijan and the running backs, and then not necessarily Pitts or London's strong suit in the quicker dump-off passes. Could be more Jonnu Smith territory this week than anything else, along with Bijan. So keep that in mind, see how that plays out. Washington pass game, I think you'll find some pieces, and then Atlanta, it's probably just Bijan who you want in your lineup. Super deep dart throw if you want to look on Jonnu Smith's way. Wouldn't be shocked to see him with 5 or 6 receptions in this matchup. All right, that's game number 6. We'll get into the 7th one here with the same weekly game total, so tied for 6th here. New Orleans heading into Houston. New Orleans actually 1.5-point road favorites. Again, that 42.5 Vegas game total, giving New Orleans a 22-point team implied total and Houston a 20.5 team implied total. Getting into the New Orleans side, they're 24th in offensive pass protection. Houston 13 in the defensive pass rush. It's a little bit in favor there of Houston's defense and getting after the quarterback. Probably going to lead to a little bit quicker throws there for New Orleans. That's going to benefit Michael Thomas. That's going to benefit Alvin Kamara and potentially a little bit of the tight end group there. It's pretty spread out though, so no one in particular that would be targeting on the tight end room, but Kamara and Michael Thomas, I think, are the bigger beneficiaries of this pass protection matchup. The run blocking, though, New Orleans number 9, Houston 26th, and stopping the run bodes really well for Kamara in this matchup, especially if he's going to be getting those receptions. I think this could be one of his breakout games. Wouldn't be shocked to see him, pushing 25 DK points in this matchup against Houston, especially in a close or even sort of game in a dome. Getting into the Houston side, 29th in offensive pass protection, 21 for New Orleans at getting after the quarterback. Slightly in the favor of New Orleans pass defense here. Not a huge matchup though in the favor. The one thing to note is Tank Dell is going to be out. I think this is going to bode well for the other pass catchers there. So John Mechie might get a little extra work, but really, I think Robert Woods, we've seen him be the most consistent. I think he ends up getting a few more targets this week. Certainly could see Nico Collins with a few more targets as well, and he's been the more explosive of the running or the wide receivers that are left there for this particular matchup. Getting into the run blocking side, Houston 15th, New Orleans 5th. I think this is going to lead to Houston struggling to run the ball, especially looking at run DVOA. Houston is 32nd, New Orleans 10th. Again, I think Houston struggles in this one to move the ball on the ground. That's probably not going to be good for Dameon Pierce in this matchup, which is fine. I think Houston's going to have to move the ball via the air. Similar to last week, I think Houston's actually going to be behind in this particular matchup, not necessarily ahead, but Houston potentially stalling out on their offensive side if they're moving the ball. I don't expect them to be moving the ball great in this matchup, but they're probably going to be stalling out. I did call Fairbairn as your kicker play of the week last week, and we saw him with 3 field goals in the first half, 4 total plus an extra point last week. So nailed that call last week. This is really a big avoid for me on the Houston side. I don't think they're going to be great there. It's Alvin Kamara in the New Orleans side. Otherwise, not a whole lot of people I'm interested in DFS in this matchup. All right, last one that is tied for 6th best on the slate, Detroit and Tampa Bay. I think they have a lot of pieces that you can use in this matchup compared to the previous couple. Again, 42.5-point Vegas game total, 6th best on the slate. We see Detroit coming in as 3-point road favorites over Tampa Bay. Detroit, 22.75 team implied total, 7th best. Tampa Bay down at 19.75. Getting into the Detroit side, number 3 in offensive pass protection. Tampa Bay actually number 4 in the defensive pass rush. DVOA pretty similar. Detroit's offense number 4. Tampa Bay number 2 on defense. So pretty even up matchup there. I think that's fine. Stud's going to eat in this situation. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown. I see him having a pretty solid week this week. Not necessarily a ceiling game, but wouldn't be shocked to see him with in between 9 to 12 receptions, approaching that 100-yard mark in this particular matchup. Hopefully he can score if he's in your lineup, but I think he's the one that's going to benefit the most from this particular matchup. LaPorta banged up. Remains to be seen yet how he's going to, or if he's even going to play this week. But if he's banged up, wouldn't expect him to have a huge game, which is probably going to funnel some more targets to Amon-Ra St. Brown this week. Offensive run blocking, though, is where it's at. Detroit, number 5. Tampa Bay, 31st, so second worst. DVOA for Detroit, 5. Tampa Bay, 21 on the run DVOA. So heavily in the favor of Detroit. We already have Jahmyr Gibbs ruled out. It's going to be a David Montgomery week, especially if you think Tampa Bay is going to be able to get after Detroit with this pass protection. Montgomery is going to favor heavily on that. He's going to get a huge opportunity in the run game. He should be very effective in the run game. Detroit, especially if Sam LaPorta is banged up or out in this, they're probably going to have a little bit more targets go to David Montgomery as well as Amon-Ra St. Brown. So those are the two pieces I'm interested in from the Detroit side. Certainly could run Goff out there. It was looking like a Detroit run game last week, and we saw Goff have a really, really good week just because we didn't have Montgomery plunging them into the end zone when they got close there. So keep that in mind. Detroit, certainly viable pieces there. Getting into the Tampa Bay side, they're 22 in offensive pass protection. Detroit, number 11 in the defensive pass rush. And then DVOA, pretty similar. Tampa Bay on offense, 18. Detroit on defense, 8. Pretty not in the favor of Tampa Bay here in the pass protection side. Not any better in the run blocking. So I think Tampa Bay is going to struggle here on offense a little bit more than you'd like if you're a Tampa Bay fan. I think Godwin is probably going to favor in this particular matchup where they're going to need to get the ball out a little bit quicker. We should see Cade Otton maybe with a few more targets and Rachaad White with a few more targets. Tampa Bay coming off the bye here could be interesting here, especially if Detroit's having no problem moving the ball. They are really good on the run blocking side. I could see Detroit running the ball pretty heavily in this. Tampa Bay is struggling to move the ball. What does that mean? Probably in general, a lower score. Wouldn't be shocked to see Detroit, at the 17, 20, 24 range. Tampa Bay scoring 10 to 13. It's hitting the under of this 42.5 Vegas game total. That's the route that I would go. Again, Tampa Bay run blocking is even worse than their pass protection. So 27th and 28th for Tampa Bay, number 10 and number 4 for Detroit. They should be all over the run game. Tampa Bay is probably going to struggle yet again in the run game. Biggest beneficiaries of that pass game, like I said, Rachaad White, Cade Otton, and probably Chris Godwin. I think any of those three are certainly okay in a full PPR league in terms of targeting for some of these matchups. Wouldn't expect a huge game from Godwin or Evans in your redraft league, but I think it's just going to be tough in general for Tampa Bay. Otton and Rachaad White probably your best value plays this week. All right, so that does it for all the number 6 games on the slate. That's going to push us all the way to number 9, which is New England going into Las Vegas. So we got kind of revenge game here with Bill Belichick going against his former coach there. So Vegas, 3-point home favorites here. This is a 41.5 Vegas game total in Vegas. Again, 9th best on this main slate. With that 3-point Vegas home favorite, we have them at 22.25 team implied total, 10th best on the slate. New England, 19.25 down there at 19th best. Getting into New England's side, they're number 5 in offensive pass protection. Vegas, 21st in the defensive pass rush. Certainly in the favor there of New England. DVOAs are pretty close. I'd expect New England to have a little bit more time than they're perhaps used to in this particular matchup. Doesn't seem like Vegas gets after the quarterback particularly great. The run blocking for New England, 29th. Fortunately for them, Vegas 28th in stopping the run. So New England maybe has a few more running lanes than they're used to in this matchup against this poor Vegas defense. I do think New England can move the ball in this matchup, especially via the air. Wouldn't be shocked to see Mac Jones come out and have a solid week finally this week. Getting hit, I don't know who he's got for pass catchers there. It's kind of a pick your poison. Maybe this is a Kendrick Bourne week. Certainly like him as a dart throw in this matchup. Wouldn't be shocked to see the running backs come out here and have a solid game either. So Zeke and Ramondre, either one of them coming out getting a touchdown. I could see both of them scoring in this matchup as well. I just think they're going to be able to move the ball pretty good against Vegas in a dome situation. Getting into the Vegas side, it's pretty close, slightly in the favor of New England for both sides here. Vegas 26th and 29th in the offensive pass protection categories. New England 20th and 17. Again, fairly close, 20, 26 there. Vegas, not a huge favor, not a huge decline in this or, lower end. Just going to be okay to slightly below average matchup here. Maybe a few more quicker dump offs. Who does that benefit? Not really sure for this Vegas team. They don't really throw to the tight end seemingly. And this could mean some more Josh Jacobs throws. Last week, I thought a similar situation here probably benefits Jakobi Meyers the most. He's a little bit more underneath. We did have Devontae Adams last week, however, dealing with a shoulder injury that he had to nut it out to get through. So maybe he's a little bit more improved, gets a few more targets. But I think really it's going to be Josh Jacobs and Jakobi Meyers benefiting the most from this pass protection situation. Run blocking, not great either. So New England 19 at stopping the run, Vegas 23rd in run blocking. Pretty even, studs eat kind of scenario. New England 9th in run DVOA means that they're not giving up a ton of explosive plays. Vegas 31 in the offensive run DVOA, meaning they aren't very explosive. Could be a kind of a grinded out game for Josh Jacobs where he's, averaging 4 yards a carry, not being super great. Vegas kind of grinding to move the ball in this. Considering it looks like Vegas a little bit behind the ball in terms of these pass protection and run blocking. We see New England pretty even there in the run blocking, maybe having a little bit more room than they're used to run. And then that pass protection being very good. I'm going to go ahead and run it. I think New England beats Vegas in Vegas here. I'm going to sound that purge siren. So upset alert here. New England over Las Vegas. I think New England pulls this one out. I think Mac Jones looks a lot better in this particular matchup and maybe silence some of the critics there. Interesting to note, New England's pace of play is very, very fast. I'm not sure what's up with that, but they do run extremely fast under Bill O'Brien now. Vegas very slow down on the bottom. Just kind of an interesting thing to see there. All right, 2 more games left. We got the number 10 game on the slate, Philly at New York Jets, and then San Francisco, Cleveland to finish it out. So second to the worst Vegas game total this week. Philadelphia heading into New York as 6.5-point road favorites. This is a 41 Vegas game total. Again, number 10 on the slate. Philadelphia, 23.75 team implied total. That's actually 5th best. New York Jets, 17.25 team implied total, 20th on the slate. Philadelphia, 19 in offensive pass protection. Jets, 23rd, slightly in the favor of Philadelphia here. Pass DVOA, number 9 for Philly, 16 for the Jets. Again, slightly in the favor of Philadelphia. They should be fine in the pass game, more of a studs eat scenario. In these situations, we should see their pass game be just fine. The run blocking, though, Philadelphia number 3 and number 3, both in run blocking and run DVOA. The Jets 20th and 15th. I do like Philadelphia's chances of running all over this Jets defense, especially if they're going to be up in this particular matchup. Wouldn't be surprised to see Swift and Gainwell both with pretty solid games on the ground here. Swift, we've certainly seen him take over this backfield the last few weeks. Once Gainwell week 1 had the backfield, gets injured, doesn't play week 2. Swift is kind of taking it over from there. I do like the opportunity for Swift to have a really good game in this game against the Jets. Certainly somebody, even though it's a low Vegas game total, that I would be somewhat interested in DFS, and certainly somebody I'm playing in redraft. Getting into the Jets side, number 16 on offensive pass protection. Philadelphia, number 17. Pass DVOA for the Jets, 28th. Philadelphia, 19th. Pretty even matchup here. I don't think this is good one way or the other. Probably best bet is Garrett Wilson in this particular matchup. Just the way that's going to run, but they're not going to be super explosive. Just kind of an okay matchup there. Getting into the Jets run blocking, number 8, unfortunately for them. Philadelphia, number 4, so a top 4 team there. Run DVOA from the Jets, 23rd. Philadelphia, number 1 in stopping the run on the DVOA, so I don't think the Jets are going to be able to run the ball very well. Probably moving the ball more effectively via the air, but they have Zach Wilson there which is a net negative. Jets do run pretty slow. And we see Philadelphia, overall pace of play is number 25. When they're leading, they're one of the slower ones at 23. I think they're just going to turn into a run game here from Philadelphia. It's going to be a pretty slow game from them. Jets already play slow and don't look to be super effective moving the ball. It's kind of even matchups there, but they do have Zach Wilson at the helm. I don't think he's going to do very well. I'd expect the Jets to be under their team implied total here. Philadelphia, slower, probably in that 21 to 24 range. I do like the under in this particular Vegas game total, just the way Zach Wilson plays, and the Jets being super slow in general. So, not a very interesting game. Swift really the biggest beneficiary of this entire matchup, in the pass game from Philadelphia should be fine, but not one that you're probably going to want to attack, especially if Philadelphia is leading in this matchup. It's going to be more of a run game volume scenario there. Last game on the main slate, San Francisco and Cleveland. This game certainly has been bet down quite a bit due to Cleveland not having Watson anymore. San Francisco, 9.5 point road favorites, a 36 Vegas game total here, really low. Again, worst on the slate. That means San Francisco's at a 22.75 team implied total, which is 7th best. Cleveland only at 13.25 for their team implied total, worst on the slate. Getting into San Francisco side, number 9 in offensive pass protection, number 1 in pass DVOA. Cleveland, number 27 in the defensive pass rush, but number 1 in the defensive pass DVOA. I would expect San Francisco to have some amount of time to throw the ball. I think they'll be okay in this particular matchup based off of this. We do know Cleveland's defense is pretty solid, but again, I think San Francisco can handle them in this particular scenario. Run blocking is very similar. San Francisco number 4, Cleveland 23rd in stopping the run, but then the DVOAs are both really high. San Francisco number 4, Cleveland number 3 in the run DVOA. Again, I think San Francisco will be fine moving the ball. It's going to be, slower, methodical drives, probably not super explosive, but they should be able to move the ball pretty effectively and just, continue on. San Francisco doesn't play necessarily very fast unless they're trailing, which I don't expect them to be. So should be a slower pace game here, which is leading to that lower Vegas game total, especially with Watson out there. Cleveland side, they project actually not too bad. Number 7 in the offensive pass protection, San Francisco 25th in the pass rush, suggestive that they should have some time to at least throw the ball. Probably best bet for that is Amari Cooper. The interesting aspect is that DVOA being significantly different. San Francisco number 5, Cleveland 31st in those DVOA pass categories. So shouldn't be very explosive there from Cleveland. Again, Amari Cooper, maybe Elijah Moore, some dump offs to Kareem Hunt, and Jerome Ford might be in play as well. Just keeping the explosive plays out of the realm of outcomes in this matchup. Getting into the run blocking side, Cleveland number 2, San Francisco 13th in stopping the run. This is in the favor of Cleveland here. They might be fairly effective at running the ball. They do have Kareem Hunt and James Ford probably leading the way in that regard. I don't think Cleveland with a 13-point team implied total probably worth rostering. It's just interesting seeing their offensive pass protection and run blocking be pretty decent matchups here against San Francisco's defensive front. I just don't expect Cleveland to be able to move the ball very well, but they might be surprising some folks in how well they can do that. I just think it's going to be a situation where they're probably not, scoring touchdowns. It's a grind for them to get into field goal range type of deal. And then San Francisco kind of slowly grinding out the clock, being slow and methodical there on the ground. I think that's going to be how it rolls out. I'm not really sure in terms of DFS. It's a 36-point Vegas game total. I'd probably avoid almost every single person in this particular matchup. Might be interesting to go get Kareem Hunt off of waivers if he's on the waivers in your league. And just in case we see Ford get injured, he would be the biggest beneficiary there. But otherwise San Francisco I think will be slow and methodical. CMC probably scores another touchdown like he usually does, but he's going to be expensive in DFS, and I just don't see him having a ceiling type of game with this particular matchup against Cleveland. If you think that San Francisco is going to be all over Cleveland, getting all sorts of turnovers and opportunities, certainly CMC could be on his way to building up a multi-touchdown game based off of that and then sitting towards the end of the matchup. But without those turnovers and things like that from Cleveland, I just think it's going to be regular old pretty good game from CMC, but not one of those ceiling matchups like we saw with 3 or 4 touchdowns. Anyway, that's going to do it for this main slate. Let's get back into some island games here. So we have New York Giants and Buffalo playing on Sunday Night Football. This is in Buffalo. They are 15-point home favorites. It is a 44-point Vegas game total, giving Buffalo a 29.5-point team implied total to the Giants 14.5. Pretty big gap there. Getting into the Giants side, number 32 in offensive pass protection and offensive pass DVOA, dead last. Buffalo, number 8 in defensive pass rush, number 3 in the pass DVOA. Expect the Giants to be under pressure. They do have a mobile quarterback back there in Tyrod Taylor, who could see, pretty decent scramble attempts in this, 4 or 5 of those. I wouldn't be shocked to see him have, 40 or 50 yards rushing in this matchup. We've seen him actually be a pretty solid quarterback in his backup duties, but this looks like he's going to be under duress, so just keep that in mind. Run blocking, not any better. Giants 32 and 30th. Buffalo 7 and 13 at stopping the run. Again, Giants likely struggling in this. It is an island matchup, so you're going to have to get somebody from the Giants. I don't dislike Tyrod Taylor. We should have Barkley back here. If the Giants are going to be under duress and not moving the ball very well, probably just going to want to get a cheap option of somebody that's underneath Wan'Dale Robinson if he's cheap. I'm not sure what those price points are yet on that Giants side, but if they're really, really going to be struggling, you're probably just going to want to get a cheap option because no one's really going to pull out ahead on that Giants side for you. Getting into the Buffalo side, they look like they're going to be crushing on offense. Number 1 offensive pass protection, Giants 30th. The DVOA 3rd versus 26th. Buffalo should have all the time in the world. We've seen when they have all the time in the world that Gabe Davis has been having some pretty solid games, a touchdown or 100 yards in these matchups where this happens. So wouldn't be shocked to see that again. We've seen Diggs be very good. Would expect that to continue in this situation. That's what we saw last week, and he was good there. Getting into the run blocking side, Buffalo 12, Giants 28th. Run DVOA 13th for Buffalo, 29th for the Giants. Again, this is an island matchup. I think this is going to be maybe one of those James Cook blow-up weeks where he finally sees he's going to have a lot of volume. Buffalo's going to be up heavy in this, and they kind of just run roughshod over the Giants. They have all sorts of open running lanes, and we see James Cook be very efficient and effective on the ground. Him getting 20 opportunities in this matchup, I think, is not out of the realm of possibilities. I think it's actually probably likely that he gets quite a few opportunities. And if they're being, explosive plays from the offense, I can certainly see Cook being the beneficiary of 2 of those touchdowns. Putting him in as your captain might not be a bad bet in this particular matchup. And, if you really think Buffalo is going to be crushing them, getting down close to the end zone, then they sub in Latavius Murray. I would see these running backs probably scoring multi-touchdowns in this, and Buffalo just kind of whomping them, Buffalo defense. And depending on what that weather is like, maybe getting that kicker kind of for an island matchup and kind of seeing where those price points are. But really cheap on the Giants side. I don't think they're going to be doing anything. And then getting 5 players from Buffalo, whoever you can kind of fit in, who you think is going to have a good matchup this week. All right, getting into the last one, Monday Night Football, and then we'll be done. We have the Dallas Cowboys going into Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. It's a 2.5-point Vegas line and a 51-point Vegas game total. We do have Dallas actually as those 2.5-point road favorites 26.75 team implied total for them. Chargers, 24.25 team implied total. Again, high Vegas game total here, 51. Dallas, 10th in offensive pass protection. Chargers, 14th. DVOA, pretty similar, 19th and 15th in the favor of the Chargers defense in that one. So, not a bad matchup for Dallas here. They should have a decent amount of time to throw the ball. Just seems like their offense isn't super creative. They don't move CD Lamb around in the line like they used to last year. It's kind of a stale offense, which is basically what we heard about Mike McCarthy in his Packers day and why they ultimately got rid of him, is that the offense was just stale and not up to date. Seems like that's similar issue now with Dallas. It's just a stale offense, very predictable, nothing, great about it. And I think McCarthy is just old, not necessarily curmudgeon, but he's old and can't adjust to current times. Fortunately for Dallas, their run blocking is number 11, Chargers 22nd. Dallas number 22 in run DVOA, Chargers 28th. I think Dallas is going to be very effective on the ground. I like Pollard to be the biggest beneficiary of this particular matchup for Dallas's offense, so take that into consideration when choosing your captains, or at least your players from Dallas's side. Getting into the Chargers side, we should have Eckler back this week. They're number 2 in offensive pass protection. Dallas number 3 at the defensive pass rush. It's a pretty even matchup. Especially, I think Dallas should be able to get after the quarterback here. They're going to need a little bit quicker throws. That's going to be good for Eckler. That's going to be good for Keenan Allen running those underneath routes. I think they're going to be the biggest beneficiaries. Tertiary to that, I think Gerald Everett will also be a beneficiary of that, as running those underneath routes. The run stopping for Dallas, number 9, Chargers 30th in run blocking, so I wouldn't expect Eckler to be super good on the ground. The DVOAs are pretty even, but I don't think Eckler is going to be very good running the ball. I think he's going to get quite a few opportunities in the pass game. Chargers probably planning to be under duress and get the ball out quickly again, so I think it's going to be Keenan Allen, it's going to be Austin Eckler, and that's going to be the tight end there, Gerald Everett. I think those are the 3 biggest beneficiaries, and probably at least 2 of those 3 are going to need to be in your island matchup for this week, and certainly all 3 of them should be in your redraft leagues. Chargers very fast on offense, number 2 overall place of play, 3rd in offensive neutral situations, 2nd when they're leading, 3rd when it's close. I'm projecting this one to be close, so I think the Chargers will have plenty of plays that they run on this Monday Night Football game. So keep that in mind. I think that's how you need to attack this. Chargers should be pretty solid. Dallas run game, I think 51 Vegas game total. I see these teams putting up some amount of points and not really necessarily leaving an egg on the ground for this. But yeah, I think Dallas probably pulls it out. It's going to be a close matchup. They should be able to run the ball and be okay passing the ball in this particular matchup. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week's slate of games in week 6. I really appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully all these new subscribers that I'm getting and the people reaching out really appreciate this. We're just trying to educate you about the play in the trenches, since we always hear the play in the trenches is what determines the outcome of the game. Why not look at it for DFS and your starting purposes? That's what we're doing here, just giving you some additional information to make better decisions at start sit, your prop bet decisions, and your DFS lineup. So hopefully we can go out there and win some money together, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good one. For Zilla Fantasy Elite, I am Todd Hoffman, and this is the Adjusted Line Play Report. Have a happy and healthy week 6. Let's go win that money together. Bye.